This is CityCast Twin Cities. I'm Sean McPherson, and here's what the cities are talking about today. Okay, Tane, I have a bit of a question for you. We have one CityCast Twin Cities neighbor, which means they've joined the CityCast membership situation. Tane, would you like to venture a guess as to who it is?
All three of the Andrews sisters.
The legendary top-selling Andrews sisters out of Minneapolis.
Yeah, of Minneapolis.
Yeah. That would be fraud because I think they've all been dead for 30-plus years or something like that. It is my father. Michael McPherson is the first CityCast Twin Cities neighbor. And this makes me feel great, especially because I complained about his shortcomings in teaching me how to play golf in the very first episode.
The thing about learning a new hobby is you also get to learn all of the awesome jargon that comes along with it. And you have to open your heart to the jargon, Sean.
I listened to that first episode. I still don't know what doglegging means, but maybe I'll go golfing with your dad and hopefully I'll figure it out.
If you want to go golfing with the one Twin Cities neighbor, you can join my dad on the fairway and become a neighbor yourself at twincities.citycast.fm. Just look in the menu and find membership. Now for our first topic of the day. We're talking about a series of massive layoffs from some of the biggest employers in the Twin Cities. We'll also take a look back at the notorious zombie pub crawl and a remembrance for a fixture in Twin Cities journalism. Tane, we've gotten just exhausted looking at your resume. You have many, many accolades, and we're just going to highlight one of them each time we have you on CityCast Twin Cities. So here we go, Tane. Get ready. It's your star turn. I'm joined by a man known for his trailblazing training for medical professionals. It's CityCast contributor Tane Danger. Tane, thank you for joining us, and thank you for all you do for medical professionals.
Yes, and the doctor will see you now.
We're also joined by Trivia Mafia co-owner Chuck Terhark, who has been in the news lately thanks to his work on Zombie Pub Crawl. Chuck, thank you for joining us.
So happy to be here.
A lot of times they say bad things come in three, but I'm nervous that bad things are just going to keep on coming and keep on coming. Earlier this week on Tuesday, Target laid off 800 people. Now Cargill has joined the party, laying off 80 employees at their Minnesota headquarters. And WCCO-TV had at least 2 layoffs, and there might be more on the way. Let's add to the mix the fact that the federal government shutdown is impacting workers in Minnesota. We might lose 100 state health workers and inspectors. Tane, are we screwed?
I got to just point out, this is my first time on the show, and it feels ominous that we're already talking about layoffs. Cargill's layoffs represent a 5% reduction in overall staffing. Target is laying off about 8% of their global corporate staff. So I think that we're in this space right now where we are seeing these layoffs at a whole variety of different places. I was listening to another interview yesterday with somebody giving people advice on sort of what to do. And this career counselor said a lot of folks are looking at like a year was the average that they were saying for how long it was taking folks to find a new job. So there's that piece, which is the most pronounced. But then, yeah, we're going to feel this in places like downtown Minneapolis and places where a lot of these headquarters and whatnot are. Are we screwed? I don't know. I'm going to really fill up on candy on Halloween as sort of like a reserve to try and make it through the next year. But I don't know. It's not good.
Tane, have you ever faced a year-long period of unemployment?
So there's a way my work is so bizarre and weird. There's a way in which people would potentially argue I've always been mildly unemployed. I mean, I'm a professional improv instructor, which again, I think that if you asked like certain relatives of mine, they would be like, Tane's had a real job. I do fine. Anyway, no, I have never been in that place where I'm like, for a year, I'm just sort of like sending out job applications. But, you know, like I think, Sean, you and I are similar ages. We both lived through that Great Recession time. We aren't probably there yet, but think about how different this is than literally just like 3 or 4 years ago when we had the, quote, Great Resignation. And people were just like, I don't like this job anymore. I'm going because I know that hiring is so strong, I'll be able to go anywhere I want. We're in like a very different place right now.
Now, Tane, these Target layoffs are the tip of the iceberg. There is a whole bunch of other layoffs that have already happened, and there might be more coming. But Target has had some unique missteps in the last couple of years. In some ways, I feel like they were the most outspoken major corporation on DEI stuff, and then they became maybe the most reactionary in the other direction. I love a wish-washy corporation. Do you think that any of this double-stepping on these positions has an impact on their layoffs now?
Yeah, I was thinking about Target in particular, kind of publicly said we're going to roll back a lot of these DEI like programs and whatnot that we have. And then they got a backlash from folks who really value that stuff. So yeah, is that part of it? Probably. Although, again, Target is uniquely in a bad spot. I mean, retail in general with tariffs, like, is just making everything is really uncertain. And so, yeah, they clearly are in a place. They've got a new CEO. They're realizing they got to do something different going forward.
For a metro area that keeps talking about reviving its downtowns, this seems like a step in the wrong direction. How is this going to impact the downtown renaissance that so many people keep talking about and hoping for?
Yeah, and thinking about it, Target just brought their employees back to downtown Minneapolis, like within the last several month or so. It was fanfare, right? Like there was the restaurants downtown were like, oh my God, this is so great. There's people coming to lunch. There's people doing happy hours. All those folks in the red shirts like are here to do this. And now this week, actually, Target told employees, stay home this week because we're doing these layoffs and it'll be less awkward if everybody's at home while we do this. And then, there's going to be all these folks who just aren't coming back next week and whatnot. It can't be good. And this is something that I'm glad we started with the actual people who are losing their jobs. And I think that is the most acute and important like harm or difficult thing here. However, I do think that it's bad for all of us if our downtown is crumbling, if our downtown doesn't have that gravity of just having workers there on a regular basis. It makes it real hard for the retail, the restaurants, the entertainment stuff to really thrive and survive. And so, I mean, I don't know, do you guys go downtown Minneapolis? Are you going to pick up the slack? You want to have a happy hour there or something?
Yeah, I think I will spend as much as all the Target employees that aren't going back on a single, happy hour event. I do try to get to downtown. I get to both downtowns. And again, I agree with you that it's not a good sign. But I do think that, frankly, folks who are holding on to some money and have their, one thing that's good about the jobs that we've all carved out is that you usually don't have all your eggs in one basket. And in that case, maybe if you are sitting in a somewhat comfortable position, maybe you can make sure to try to get to these downtown areas. Tane, we're talking sometimes this week about horrible things about Minnesota. I would call us the fraud capital of America right now, right? We're really leading in fraud. And so I'm not exactly elated that we're losing layoffs from federal funding that are going to impact, like, not pencil pushers, but actually people who make sure that our facilities are safe. Can you talk a little bit about these layoffs that might start on December 2nd for some, not federal employees, but state employees in Minnesota who are going to get layoffs because the money to fund their jobs is no longer there?
Yeah, as you were alluding to in the intro, we're looking at we're looking at layoffs that are going to hit the folks who regulate hospitals and nursing homes, the folks who are basically trying to make sure that these different systems actually comply with federal standards and things like that. There's also a piece of this which we're talking a lot about this week in particular, where some of this federal shutdown stuff is going to start impacting the Women, Infants, and Children program. There's been a lot of reporting this week on whether food stamps and things will shut down. But to stick with your fraud piece, right? Like, yeah, we could probably have a whole show about all these different fraud cases that have been happening in Minnesota. And seemingly there's like bipartisan, multi-partisan support of like, oh, we need more people watching the store. We need more folks like eyes on this to try and prevent some of this from happening. And if those folks are taken out of the mix, I don't know. I feel like my catchphrase for this episode is going to be like, it doesn't seem good. It doesn't seem great.
Well, you know what? I think that's the catchphrase for a lot of what's happening right now. And it's not just the folks who work at Target, who work at Cargill, who work at WCCO, who might get laid off because of the lack of federal funding. It could be the fact that your grandma's in a nursing home. It could be the fact that you run a restaurant in downtown. There is so much runoff. When bad things happen, especially to Target, things get bad all around town. And we want to hear from you. How is this impacting you, whether it's directly or whether it's just an offset cause? Leave us a voicemail or send us a text, 612-217-0637. We have a lot more spooky news to discuss, but before we do that, we're going to take a quick break. Trivia Mafia is a trivia company that I started with our guest Chuck Terhark back in 2007. And for many years, every single bit of success we had was still in the shadow of Zombie Pub Crawl. I'd be like, okay, Chuck, we got 25 trivia nights going. Are we making as much money as Zombie Pub Crawl makes one night in October? And he'd be like, not nearly. I'm sorry. We're just doing fantastic things at Zombie Pub Crawl, and Trivia Mafia is but a pittance in my accounting. Because Zombie Pub Crawl was huge. Tane, you lived in the Twin Cities throughout the whole Zombie Pub Crawl. It was like you would cancel other plans on the weekend that Zombie Pub Crawl was happening. Y'all closed down highways with the permission of state authorities to make sure that you could actually get the buses to different spots. Shaq, legendary basketball player, DJ'd. Chuck, did you say he was a perfect gentleman? Like just super nice?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, he was definitely there just cashing a check, and he was like, this is kind of weird. But he did put the little bit of zombie makeup on. He had some blood on. He did his thing, and it was a fantastic performance.
So Chuck is the co-founder and principal organizer of Zombie Pub Crawl, but I should say was the co-founder and principal organizer because Zombie Pub Crawl, which celebrates the undead, is fully dead. But there's been a round of unexpected ZPC nostalgia thanks to an article that Laura Ewan did in the Strib that, Chuck, you spoke with Laura about. So thank you so much, Chuck, for walking us down a very gory strip of memory lane.
Yeah, so a bloody shamble down memory lane. I think it's part of the 20-year nostalgia cycle because it is 20 years this October since we started it.
Wow. So I've been told that there was actual physical equipment. There was stuff involved with the pub crawl. What stuff? And where is it now?
So what happens when you run an event like this, it basically turned into a large festival, and we had to run it like a festival. And one year we just got really into inflatables, and we're like, what if we get a large zombie inflatable? So we met with a local company that specializes in inflatables, and we asked them, what's the largest inflatable we can get that we can put up and won't tip over? And they told us, well, you could probably do a 50-foot zombie. So we designed a 50-foot zombie. I like to say that he's actually 100 feet tall because he's only from the waist up. His guts are kind of spilling out of his stomach.
Sure, of course.
And we started putting that up every year at the Zombie Pub Crawl. We call him Phil. We named him Phil after our favorite local Minneapolis licensing inspector.
Chuck, am I correct that the same people who made your inflatable made Lizzo's monstrously big butt?
Yes. Landmark Creations. They've made a lot of the inflatables that you've seen on the stages throughout the world. And they're the local company. I think they're in Burnsville.
So there was the pub crawl, but then you were saying like it grew. There was music. There were all these different things. Are there particular aspects of it that you really miss that you're nostalgic for?
One of my favorite ideas that we had was the World Brain Eating Championships, where we had the people who actually put on the Nathan's hot dog eating contest every 4th of July. We flew them in with a bunch of professional competitive eaters, and we had Andrew Zimmern create a brain taco recipe. We made hundreds of brain tacos and had everybody up on stage to compete in the World Brain Eating Contest, which Joey Chestnut actually won and set the brain eating record.
Of course he did.
Mm-hmm.
And we started this whole thing saying Zombie Pub Crawl no more. I mean, the whole notion would be it could come back, right? Like that it could rise again. I feel like there's people who are listening to all this who are probably a little younger than us. Like, how could I have missed this? Please resurrect this, reanimate this flesh.
I don't know. Do you think it would be as popular as it was? It feels like it was a thing of its time and its place, and it was a wonderful time in my life. I don't know if I personally want to bring it back. When you dress as a zombie, that's like a license to just act a fool and just act as crazy as possible, which is what made the event so fun and so memorable for so many people and made it the most stressful night of my life year after year after year. So now that it's done, for me anyway, I get to enjoy October again, which is my favorite month, and Halloween season is my favorite season. And so it's been kind of a blessing for me personally to put it to bed.
Speaking of enjoying October, let's talk about Halloween. It is Halloween today, and there's a bunch of enjoyable things to do all around the Twin Cities. I got to give a strong recommendation to check out the Twin Cities Halloween Guide that our producer Tiffany Bowie did over at twincities.citycast.fm. Also, I feel like the Twin Cities struggle with a lot of really trick-or-treat deserts where it's really hard to find a solid line of houses that are actually serving up candy. And I want to strongly endorse this spot in St. Paul called Treat Street. This is Palace Ave between Albert and Hamlin, but really some good stuff to see all the way up to Pasco. All the houses are serving candy, and it's really a lot of fun. They shut down driving traffic in that one particular block on Palace between Albert and Hamlin. So that's my big St. Paul recommendation for this evening if you're trying to find a spot to go trick-or-treating. Chuck, you live in Northeast. Do you have a favorite trick-or-treating spot?
Northeast is a trick-or-treating desert, and I feel bad about that. I think it's everybody's civic responsibility to trick-or-treat in your own neighborhoods. That's how you solve this problem. But I'm also a huge hypocrite, and I don't. I take my kids to a friend's neighborhood in St. Anthony Park in St. Paul, and that is a real, that's that very twisty, you get lost in the twisty streets area over sort of by Prospect Park. It's a real full-size candy bar neighborhood, and the kids just love it.
You heard it here first. Chuck Terhark says St. Paul is better than Minneapolis in every way. I also want to shout out the Bare Bones Holiday Extravaganza. CityCast Twin Cities is actually partnering with them this year, but the events happen in Powderhorn Park. They go down tonight, Saturday, and Sunday. I was out there recently with my producer, Adam, capturing some video. I should say Adam was capturing some incredible video, and I was talking with a board member from the Bare Bones Holiday Extravaganza. This is really a cousin to Heart of the Beast and Powderhorn Park and this history of puppetry. And I felt like I was just going there to be like the cool radio guy. I did not expect to be this moved by seeing people fighting against where our country is heading with puppets. I thought I was going to get out of there in like 25 minutes. Adam was like, let's really be here for a minute. And I'm so glad. And I'm just like inspired by what they're doing, grateful for what they're doing. And it really is one of a kind. You can check out that on our social media, but it's also just happening at Powderhorn Park at 7 p.m. Tonight, tomorrow, and Sunday. And there is ASL support on the Saturday night show. So, Tane, do you have any Halloween tips for this weekend?
So I live in South Minneapolis, and actually just blocks from me, Pillsbury and 39th, basically, has the Enchanted Alley. It's not quite an entire enchanted street that you have, like a treat street, but it is one alley that gets shut down. All of the houses along it do it up in all kinds of spooky stuff, and there's people giving stuff out. There's activities to do. For some reason, there was a trebuchet last year, and I think people were like launching pumpkins from it, and so it's very fun. Highly recommend. South Minneapolis, right around 39th and Pillsbury. You'll find it.
Would I call it a catapult until I put on a bow tie and then I'd call it a trebuchet as well? Or is there any actual difference?
I don't know whether you would or not, but there absolutely is a difference.
No, there's not. What is the difference?
Oh, absolutely there is. And the elementary school student who built this trebuchet, if you go to the Enchanted Alley, will explain to you the difference between a catapult and a trebuchet because he knows.
In 11 seconds, convince me that there's a difference between trebuchet and catapult.
So a catapult is simply sort of one lever that sort of throws something this way. A trebuchet is counterweighted, and so there's a more of like a pulley system that pulls it and throws it the other way. Chuck is nodding. He knows his medieval siege warfare.
There's a rope involved as well, so it's right. Operating on the same principle as a whip crack.
Right.
I'm sure you've stopped listening. I'm talking to everyone, but I do want to know what spookiness you're getting into, whether it's just catapult level stuff or really some trebuchet that's going on. Send us a text, leave us a voicemail on the CityCast Twin Cities hotline, 612-217-0637. We're going to pay tribute to a hero in Minnesota journalism, but before we do that, we're going to take a quick break. I don't think it'd be easy to call journalism a thankless job because, frankly, there's a lot of recognition at times. There's a lot of low pay, but there's award nights. There's reasons to put on a bow tie. There's reasons to celebrate. But I imagine in the spectrum of journalism jobs, being a co-publisher of a Black newspaper, especially as the internet is really coming up to speed, is a comparatively thankless job in the world of journalism. But it is wildly important. And I think a lot of folks don't know in the Twin Cities that we have two thriving Black newspapers, the Minnesota Spokesman-Recorder and Insight News. These are both well-staffed papers that I reference frequently. They have strong writers, and they're a godsend for the Twin Cities. We're paying tribute to a person who was very connected to the Minnesota Spokesman-Recorder. That'd be Wallace Jackman, better known as Jack Jackman. And I want to highlight some of his life and some of his work, and a particular thanks to Keith Harris from Racket, who landed in Minnesota and got a job with Jack Jackman. So we're going to do that and celebrate this man who recently passed away after a beautiful, long life where he gave so much to the community. But I want to back up a little bit. Tane, you've been very connected to journalism throughout your life, and you were talking before we got started about how special the Minnesota Spokesman-Recorder and Insight News are. So could you throw some highlighter on the importance of the Minnesota Spokesman-Recorder in particular?
Sure. So a lot of my connection to this specifically, my husband created a podcast last year called Ghost of a Chance, which was about a Black couple that lived in our South Minneapolis home 100 years ago. And through that, he really got into, and I with him, into the Black newspapers that were there then and still are here now, including the Spokesman in particular. And the amount of coverage that they were doing then and continue to do of Black life in the Twin Cities and in Minnesota, the fact that you can go back into their archives, which are now digitized, which is an amazing asset for anybody who wants to look into this. But you can go back into those and see what people were doing, what the social scene was like, what the issues of the day were. You don't know anything if you don't know your history, I feel like. And these newspapers were a first draft of history and continue to be up until this day. And specifically for a community in Minneapolis that was 100 years ago finding itself, trying to build a new way of being in this place, all the way up and through today. I really can't understate how important those institutions have been and are.
I'm so thankful that it's not just a historical relic, that you mentioned the fact that these stories are still being crafted and being told by these institutions in a way that mainstream newspapers are at times hostile to and sometimes just sort of neglectful of covering these stories. And when you think about a gentleman like Jack Jackman, who really ushered a place like the Minnesota Spokesman-Recorder through a lot of transitions. They were the Minneapolis Spokesman and the St. Paul Recorder. They came together. They made sure that it was still viable, navigating a whole bunch of side gigs. Whenever you read Keith Harris talking about this mentor of his, he talks about he was selling potato chips as well, or we were doing something. We had to go buy a car in Iowa. This was not a man who was sitting high on the hog, comfortable with, tons of revenue coming in from the one newspaper. He was making ends meet and making sure that he could keep on bringing these stories to Minnesota, not only for the Minnesotans today, but for folks 100 years from now when somebody else is going to need to access this record and they're going to be really underserved by what's in the Star Tribune and what's in the Pioneer Press, and they're going to really benefit from something like the Spokesman-Recorder. So rest in peace to Jack Jackman and Keith Harris, who knew the man. I'd never met the man, closed his piece in Racket with a really beautiful paragraph, and I just want to read that because it's a beautiful tribute to Jack Jackman. Next time you're driving on 38th Street in South Minneapolis, passing 4th Avenue, glance over at the mural at the side of the Spokesman-Recorder building, and you'll see Jack there, among other notable figures of Black news publishing in Minnesota. It's where he belongs. That was Chuck Terhark, co-owner of Trivia Mafia, and Tane Danger, CityCast contributor and legendary trailblazing trainer of medical professionals. Our executive producer is Anna Wagle. Our creative producers are Adam Sage and Tiffany Bowie. Post-production this week was done by Natalie Rivera, and our host is me, Sean McPherson. Our theme music is by Carl Christensen, and our mailbag theme music is by Adam Sage. You can get more news delivered right to your inbox by subscribing to the CityCast Twin Cities newsletter. If you enjoyed today's show, why not share this podcast with someone a little spooky? We'll see you back here on Monday for more news from around the city.